Jules took a long slug from his own glass and said to Nino,
"You can't have a drink. Your doctor forbids it."
Nino scowled.
Screw my doctor.
Then a play-acting look of contrition came on his face.
Hey, Julie, that's you. You're my doctor, right? I don't mean you, old buddy. Johnny, get me a drink or I get up out of bed and get it myself.
Johnny shrugged and moved toward the bar. Jules said indifferently,
"I'm saying he shouldn't have it."
Johnny knew why Jules irritated him. The doctor's voice was always cool, the words never stressed, no matter how dire, the voice always low and controlled. If he gave a warning, the warning was in the words alone. The voice itself was neutral, as if uncaring. It was this that made Johnny sore enough to bring Nino his water glass of whiskey. Before he handed it over, he said to Jules,
"This won't kill him, right?"
"No, it won't kill him."
Lucy gave him an anxious glance, started to say something, then kept still. Meanwhile, Nino had taken the whiskey and poured it down his throat. Johnny was smiling down at Nino. They had shown the punk doctor. Suddenly, Nino gasped. His face seemed to turn blue. He couldn't catch his breath and was choking for air. His body leapt upward like a fish. His face was gorged with blood, his eyes bulging. Jules appeared on the other side of the bed, facing Johnny and Lucy. He took Nino by the neck and held him still and plunged the needle into the shoulder, near where it joined the neck. Nino went limp in his hands. The heaves of his body subsided, and after a moment, he slumped down back into his pillow. His eyes closed in sleep. Johnny, Lucy, and Jules went back into the living room part of the suite and sat around the huge, solid coffee table. Lucy picked up one of the aquamarine phones and ordered coffee and some food to be sent up. Johnny had gone over to the bar and mixed himself a drink.
"Did you know he would have that reaction from the whiskey?"
Jules shrugged.
"I was pretty sure he would."
"Then why didn't you warn me?"
"I warned you."
"You didn't warn me right. You are really one hell of a doctor. You don't give a shit. You tell me to get Nino in a crazy house. You don't bother to use a nice word like sanatorium. You really like to stick it to people, right?"
Lucy was staring down in her lap. Jules kept smiling at Fontaine.
"Nothing was going to stop you from giving Nino that drink. You had to show you didn't have to accept my warnings, my orders. Remember when you offered me a job as your personal physician after that throat business? I turned you down because I knew we could never get along. A doctor thinks he's God. He's the high priest in modern society. That's one of his rewards. But you would never treat me that way. I'd be a flunky god to you, like those doctors you guys have in Hollywood. Where do you get those people from, anyway? Christ, don't they know anything? Or don't they just care? They must know what's happening to Nino. But they just give him all kinds of drugs to keep him going. They wear those silk suits and they kiss your ass because you're a power movie man, and so you think they are great doctors. Showbiz, docs, you gotta have heart, right? But they don't give a fuck if you live or die. Well, my little hobby, unforgivable as it is to keep people alive. I let you give Nino that drink to show you what could happen to him."
Jules leaned toward Johnny Fontaine, his voice still calm, unemotional.
"Your friend is almost terminal. Do you understand that? He hasn't got a chance without therapy and strict medical care. His blood pressure and diabetes and bad habits can cause a cerebral hemorrhage in this very next instant. His brain will blow itself apart. Is that vivid enough for you? Sure, I said crazy house. I want you to understand what's needed, or you won't make a move. I'll put it to you straight. You can save your buddy's life by having him committed. Otherwise, kiss him goodbye."
"Jules, darling, Jules, don't be so tough. Just tell him."
Jules stood up. His usual cool was gone. Johnny Fontaine noticed with satisfaction. His voice, too, had lost its quiet, unaccented monotone.
"Do you think this is the first time I've had to talk to people like you in a situation like this? I did it every day. Lucy says don't be so tough, but she doesn't know what she's talking about. You know, I used to tell people, don't eat so much or you'll die. Don't smoke so much or you'll die. Don't work so much or you'll die. Don't drink so much or you'll die. Nobody listens. You know why? Because I don't say you will die tomorrow. Well, I can tell you that Nino may very well die tomorrow."
Jules went over to the bar and mixed himself another drink.
"How about it, Johnny? Are you going to get Nino committed?"
"I don't know."
Jules took a quick drink at the bar and filled his glass again.
"You know, it's a funny thing. You can smoke yourself to death, drink yourself to death, work yourself to death, and even eat yourself to death. But that's all acceptable. The only thing you can't do medically is screw yourself to death, and yet that's where they put all the obstacles."
He paused to finish his drink.
"But even that's trouble, for women anyway. I used to have women who weren't supposed to have any more babies. It's dangerous, I'd tell them. You could die, I'd tell them. And a month later, they pop in, their faces all rosy, and say, "Doctor, I think I'm pregnant." And sure enough, they'd kill the rabbit. "But it's dangerous," I'd tell them. My voice used to have expression in those days. And they'd smile at me and say, "But my husband and I are very strict Catholic," they'd say.
There was a knock on the door, and 2 waiters wheeled in a cart covered with food and silver service coffee pots. They took a portable table from the bottom of the cart and set it up. Then Johnny dismissed them. They sat at the table and ate the hot sandwiches Lucy had ordered and drank the coffee. Johnny leaned back and lit up a cigarette.
So you save lives. How come you became an abortionist?
Lucy spoke for the first time.
He wanted to help girls in trouble. Girls who might commit suicide or do something dangerous to get rid of the baby.
Jules smiled at her and sighed.
It's not that simple. I became a surgeon finally. I've got the good hands, as ballplayers say. But I was so good I scared myself silly. I'd open up some poor bastard's belly and know he was going to die. I'd operate and know that the cancer or tumor would come back. But I'd send them off home with a smile and a lot of bullshit. Some poor broad comes in and I slice off one tit. A year later she's back and I slice off the other tit. A year after that I scoop out her insides like you scoop the seeds out of a cantaloupe. After all that she dies anyway. Meanwhile husbands keep calling up and asking, "What do the tests show? What do the tests show?" So I hired an extra secretary to take all those calls. I saw the patient only when she was fully prepared for examination, tests, or operation. I spent the minimum possible time with the victim, because I was, after all, a busy man. And then finally, I'd let the husband talk to me for 2 minutes. "It's terminal," I'd say. And they could never hear that last word. They understood what it meant, but they never heard it. I thought at first that unconsciously I was dropping my voice on the last word, so I consciously said it louder. But still, they never heard it. One guy even said, "What the hell do you mean it's germinal?"
Jules started to laugh.
Germinal, terminal, what the hell? I started to do abortions. Nice and easy. Everybody happy, like washing the dishes and leaving a clean sink. That was my class. I loved it. I loved being an abortionist. I don't believe that a 2-month fetus is a human being, so no problems there. I was helping young girls and married women who were in trouble. I was making good money. I was out of the front lines. When I got caught, I felt like a deserter that has been hauled in. But I was lucky. A friend pulled some strings and got me off, but now the big hospitals won't let me operate. So here I am, giving good advice again, which is being ignored, just like in the old days.
I'm not ignoring it. I'm thinking it over.
Lucy finally changed the subject.
What are you doing in Vegas, Johnny? Relaxing from your duties as big-time Hollywood wheel or working?
Johnny shook his head.
Mike Corleone wants to see me and have a talk. He's flying in tonight with Tom Hagen. Tom said they'll be seeing you, Lucy. You know what it's all about?
Lucy shook her head.
We're all having dinner together tomorrow night. Freddie, too. I think it might have something to do with the hotel. The casino has been dropping money lately, which shouldn't be. The Don might want Mike to check it out.
I hear Mike finally got his face fixed.
Lucy laughed.
I guess Kay talked him into it. He wouldn't do it when they were married. I wonder why. It looked so awful and made his nose drip. He should have had it done sooner.
She paused for a moment.
Jules was called in by the Corleone family for that operation. They used him as a consultant and an observer.
Johnny nodded.
I recommended him for it.
Oh. Anyway, Mike said he wanted to do something for Jules. That's why he's having us to dinner tomorrow night.
Jules said musingly,
He didn't trust anybody. He warned me to keep track of what everybody did. It was fairly straight, ordinary surgery. Any competent man could do it.
There was a sound from the bedroom of the suite, and they looked toward the drapes. Nino had become conscious again. Johnny went and sat on the bed. Jules and Lucy went over to the foot of the bed. Nino gave them a wan grin.
Okay, I'll stop being a wise guy. I feel really lousy. Johnny, remember about a year ago what happened when we were with those 2 broads down in Palm Springs? I swear to you, I wasn't jealous about what happened. I was glad. You believe me, Johnny?
Sure, Nino. I believe you.
Lucy and Jules looked at each other. From everything they had heard and knew about Johnny Fontaine, it seemed impossible that he would take a girl away from a close friend like Nino. And why was Nino saying he wasn't jealous a year after it happened? The same thought crossed both their minds. that Nino was drinking himself to death romantically because a girl had left him to go with Johnny Fontaine. Jules checked Nino again.
I'll get a nurse to be in the room with you tonight. You really have to stay in bed for a couple of days. No kidding.
Nino smiled.
Okay, Doc. Just don't make the nurse too pretty.
Jules made a call for the nurse, and then he and Lucy left. Johnny sat in a chair near the bed to wait for the nurse. Nino was falling asleep again, an exhausted look on his face. Johnny thought about what he had said about not being jealous about what had happened over a year ago with those two broads down in Palm Springs. The thought had never entered his head that Nino might be jealous. A year ago, Johnny Fontaine had sat in his plush office, the office of a movie company he headed, and felt so lousy as he had ever felt in his life, which was surprising, because the first movie he had produced, with himself as star, and Nino in a featured part, was making tons of money. Everything had worked. Everybody had done their job. The picture was brought in under budget, everybody was going to make a fortune out of it, and Jack Woltz was losing 10 years of his life. Now, Johnny had 2 more pictures in production, one starring himself, one starring Nino. Nino was great on the screen as one of those charming, dopey lover boys that women love to shove between their tits. Little boy lost. Everything he touched made money. It was rolling in. The Godfather was getting his percentage through the bank, and that made Johnny feel really good. He had justified his Godfather's faith. But today, that wasn't helping much. And now that he was a successful independent movie producer, he had as much power, maybe more, than he had ever had as a singer. Beautiful broads fell all over him, just like before, though for a more commercial reason. He had his own plane, he lived more lavishly even, with the special tax benefits a businessman had that artists didn't get. Then, what the hell was bothering him? He knew what it was. The front of his head hurt. His nasal passages hurt. His throat itched. The only way he could scratch and relieve that itch was by singing, and he was afraid to even try. He had called Jules Siegel about it, when it would be safe to try to sing, and Jules had said any time he felt like it. So he'd tried, and sounded so hoarse and lousy he'd given up, and his throat would hurt like hell the next day, hurt in a different way than before the warts had been taken off, hurt worse, burning. He was afraid to keep singing, afraid that he'd lose his voice forever or ruin it. And if he couldn't sing, what the hell was the use of everything else? Everything else was just bullshit. Singing was the only thing he really knew. Maybe he knew more about singing and his kind of music than anybody else in the world. He was that good, he realized now. All those years had made him a real pro. Nobody could tell him the right and the wrong. He didn't have to ask anybody. He knew. What a waste. What a damn waste. It was a Friday, and he decided to spend the weekend with Virginia and the kids. He called her up, as he always did, to tell her he was coming. Really, to give her a chance to say no. She never said no. Not in all the years they had been divorced, because she would never say no to a meeting of her daughters and their father. What a broad, Johnny thought. He'd been lucky with Virginia, and though he knew he cared more about her than any other woman he knew, it was impossible for them ever to live together sexually. Maybe when they were 65, like when you retire, they'd retire together, retire from everything. But reality shattered these thoughts when he arrived there and found Virginia was feeling a little grouchy herself, and the 2 girls not that crazy to see him because they had been promised a weekend visit with some girlfriends on a California ranch where they could ride horses. He told Virginia to send the girls off to the ranch and kiss them goodbye with an amused smile. He understood them so well. What kid wouldn't rather go riding horses on a ranch than hang around with a grouchy father who picked his own spots as a father? He said to Virginia,
I'll have a few drinks and then I'll shove off too.
All right.
She was having one of her bad days, rare but recognizable. It wasn't too easy for her, leading this kind of life. She saw him taking an extra large drink.
What are you cheering yourself up for? Everything is going so beautifully for you. I never dreamed you had it in you to be such a good businessman.
Johnny smiled at her.
It's not so hard.
At the same time, he was thinking, so that's what was wrong. He understood women, and he understood now that Virginia was down because she thought he was having everything his own way. Women really hated seeing their men doing too well. It irritated them. It made them less sure of the hold they exerted over them through affection, sexual custom, or marriage ties. So, more to cheer her up than voice his own complaints, Johnny said,
What the hell difference does it make if I can't sing?
Oh, Johnny, you're not a kid anymore. You're over 35. Why do you keep worrying about that silly singing stuff? You make more money as a producer anyhow.
Johnny looked at her curiously.
I'm a singer. I love to sing. What's being old got to do with that?
Virginia was impatient.
I never liked your singing anyway. Now that you've shown you can make movies, I'm glad you can't sing anymore.
They were both surprised when Johnny said with fury,
That's a fucking lousy thing to say.
He was shaken. How could Virginia feel like that? How could she dislike him so much? Virginia smiled at his being hurt, and because it was so outrageous that he should be angry at her, she said,
How do you think I felt when all those girls came running after you because of the way you sang? How would you feel if I went ass naked down the street to get men running after me? That's what your singing was. And I used to wish you'd lose your voice and could never sing again. But that was before we got divorced.
Johnny finished his drink.
You don't understand a thing. Not a damn thing.
He went into the kitchen and dialed Nino's number. He quickly arranged for them both to go down to Palm Springs for the weekend and gave Nino the number of a girl to call, a real, fresh, young beauty he'd been meaning to get around to.
She'll have a friend for you. I'll be at your place in an hour.
Virginia gave him a cool goodbye when he left. He didn't give a damn. It was one of the few times he was angry with her. The hell with it. He'd just tear loose for the weekend and get all the poison out of his system. Sure enough, everything was fine down in Palm Springs. Johnny used his own house down there, was always kept open and staffed this time of the year. The two girls were young enough to be great fun and not too rapacious for some kind of favor. Some people came over to keep them company at the pool until supper time. Nino went to his room with his girl to get ready for supper and a quick bang while he was still warm from the sun. Johnny wasn't in the mood, so he sent his girl, a short bandbox blonde named Tina, up to shower by herself. He never could make love to another woman after he'd had a fight with Virginia. He went into the glass-walled patio living room that held a piano. When singing with the band, he'd fool around with the piano just for laughs, so he could pick out a song in a fake moonlight soft ballad style. He sat down now and hummed along a little bit with the piano, very softly, muttering a few words but not really singing. Before he knew it, Tina was in the living room making him a drink and sitting beside him at the piano. He played a few tunes, and she hummed with him. He left her at the piano and went up to take his shower. In the shower, he sang short phrases, more like speaking. He got dressed and went back down. Tina was still alone. Nino was really working his girl over or getting drunk. Johnny sat down at the piano again while Tina wandered off outside to watch the pool. He started singing one of his old songs. There was no burning in his throat. The tones were coming out muted, but with proper body. He looked at the patio. Tina was still out there. The glass door was closed. She wouldn't hear him. For some reason, he didn't want anybody to hear him. He started off fresh on an old ballad that was his favorite. He sang full out, as if he were singing in public, letting himself go, waiting for the familiar burning rasp in his throat. But there was none. He listened to his voice. It was different somehow, but he liked it. It was darker. It was a man's voice, not a kid's. Rich, he thought, dark rich. He finished the song, easing up, and sat there at the piano thinking about it. Behind him, Nino said,
Not bad, old buddy, not bad at all.
Johnny swiveled his body around. Nino was standing in the doorway alone. His girl wasn't with him. Johnny was relieved. He didn't mind Nino hearing him.
Yeah. Let's get rid of those two broads. Send them home.
You send them home. They're nice kids. I'm not going to hurt their feelings. Besides, I just banged mine twice. How would it look if I sent her away without even giving her dinner?
The hell with it, Johnny thought. Let the girls listen, even if he sounded lousy. He called up a band leader he knew in Palm Springs and asked him to send over a mandolin for Nino. The band leader protested. Hell, nobody plays a mandolin in California. Johnny yelled, just get one. The house was loaded with recording equipment, and Johnny had the two girls work the turnoff and volumes. After they had dinner, Johnny went to work. He had Nino playing the mandolin as accompaniment and sang all his old songs. He sang them all the way out, not nursing his voice at all. His throat was fine. He felt that he could sing forever. In the months he had not been able to sing, he had often thought about singing, planned out how he would phrase lyrics differently now than as a kid. He had sung the songs in his head with more sophisticated variations of emphasis. Now he was doing it for real. Sometimes it would go wrong in the actual singing. Stuff that had sounded good when he heard it just in his head didn't work out when he tried it really singing out loud. Out loud, he thought. He wasn't listening to himself now. He was concentrating on performing. He fumbled a little on timing, but that was okay, just rusty. He had a metronome in his head that would never fail him. Just a little practice was all he needed. Finally, he stopped singing. Tina came over to him with eyes shining and gave him a long kiss.
Now I know why Mother goes to all your movies.
It was the wrong thing to say at any time except this. Johnny and Nino laughed. They played the feedback, and now Johnny could really listen to himself. His voice had changed a hell of a lot, but was still, unquestionably, the voice of Johnny Fontaine. It had become much richer and darker, as he had noticed before, but there was also the quality of a man singing rather than a boy. The voice had more true emotion, more character, and the technical part of his singing was far superior to anything he had ever done. It was nothing less than masterful. And if he was that good now, rusty as hell, how good would he be when he got in shape again? Johnny grinned at Nino.
Is that as good as I think it is?
Nino looked at his happy face thoughtfully.
It's very damn good, but let's see how you sing tomorrow.
Johnny was hurt that Nino should be so downbeat.
You son of a bitch. You know you can't sing like that. Don't worry about tomorrow. I feel great.
But he didn't sing any more that night. He and Nino took the girls to a party, and Tina spent the night in his bed, but he wasn't much good there. The girl was a little disappointed, but what the hell, you couldn't do everything all in one day, Johnny thought. He woke up in the morning with a sense of apprehension, with a vague terror that he had dreamed his voice had come back. Then, when he was sure it was not a dream, he got scared that his voice would be shot again. He went to the window and hummed a bit. Then he went down to the living room, still in his pajamas. He picked out a tune on the piano, and after a while tried singing with it. He sang mutedly, but there was no pain, no hoarseness in his throat, so he turned it on. The chords were true and rich. He didn't have to force it at all. Easy, just pouring out. Johnny realized that the bad time was over. He had it all now. And it didn't matter a damn if he fell on his face with movies. It didn't matter if he couldn't get it up with Tina the night before. It didn't matter that Virginia would hate him being able to sing again. For a moment, he had just one regret. If only his voice had come back to him while trying to sing for his daughters. How lovely that would have been. That would have been so lovely. The hotel nurse had come into the room wheeling a cart loaded with medication. Johnny got up and stared down at Nino, who was sleeping, or maybe dying. He knew Nino wasn't jealous of his getting his voice back. He understood that Nino was only jealous because he was so happy about getting his voice back, that he cared so much about singing. For what was very obvious now was that Nino Valenti didn't care enough about anything to make him want to stay alive. Chapter 27. Michael Corleone arrived late in the evening, and by his own order was not met at the airport. Only 2 men accompanied him, Tom Hagen and a new bodyguard named Albert Neri. The most lavish suite of rooms in the hotel had been set aside for Michael and his party. Already waiting in that suite were the people it would be necessary for Michael to see. Freddie greeted his brother with a warm embrace. Freddie was much stouter, more benevolent-looking, cheerful, and far more dandified. He wore an exquisitely tailored gray silk suit and accessories to match. His hair was razor-cut and arranged as carefully as a movie star's. His face glowed with perfect barbering, and his hands were manicured. He was an altogether different man than the one who had been shipped out of New York 4 years before. He leaned back and surveyed Michael fondly.
You look a hell of a lot better now that you got your face fixed. Your wife finally talked you into it, huh? How is Kay? When's she going to come out and visit us out here?
Michael smiled at his brother.
You're looking pretty good, too. Kay would have come out this time, but she's carrying another kid, and she has the baby to look after. Besides, this is business, Freddie. I have to fly back tomorrow night or the morning after.
You have to eat something first. We've got a great chef in the hotel. You'll get the best food you ever ate. Go take your shower and change, and everything will be set up right here. I have all the people you want to see lined up. They'll be waiting around when you're ready. I just have to call them.
Let's save Mo Green to the end, okay? Ask Johnny Fontaine and Nino up to eat with us. And Lucy and her doctor friend. We can talk while we eat.
He turned to Hagen.
Anybody you want to add to that, Tom?
Hagen shook his head. Freddie had greeted him much less affectionately than Michael, but Hagen understood. Freddie was on his father's shit list, and Freddie naturally blamed the consigliere for not straightening things out. Hagen would gladly have done so, but he didn't know why Freddie was in his father's bad graces. The Don did not give voice to specific grievances. He just made his displeasure felt. It was after midnight before they gathered around the special dinner table set up in Michael's suite. Lucy kissed Michael and didn't comment on his face looking so much better after the operation. Jules Siegel boldly studied the repaired cheekbone.
A good job. It's knitted nicely. Is the sinus okay?
Fine. Thanks for helping out.
Dinner focused on Michael as they ate. They all noted his resemblance in speech and manner to the Don. In some curious way, he inspired the same respect, the same awe, and yet he was perfectly natural, at pains to put everyone at their ease. Hagen, as usual, remained in the background. The new man they did not know. Albert Neri was also very quiet and unobtrusive. He had claimed he was not hungry and sat in an armchair close to the door, reading a local newspaper. After they had had a few drinks and food, the waiters were dismissed. Michael spoke to Johnny Fontaine.
Hear your voice is back as good as ever. You got all your old fans back? Congratulations.
Thanks.
He was curious about exactly why Michael wanted to see him. What favor would be asked? Michael addressed them all in general.
The Corleone family is thinking of moving out here to Vegas, selling out all our interest in the olive oil business and settling here. The Don and Hagen and myself have talked it over, and we think here is where the future is for the family. That doesn't mean right now or next year. It may take 2, 3, even 4 years to get things squared away, but that's the general plan. Some friends of ours own a good percentage of this hotel and casino, so that will be our foundation. Mo Green will sell us his interest so it can be wholly owned by friends of the family.
Freddie's moon face was anxious.
Mike, you sure about Mo Green selling? He never mentioned it to me, and he loves the business. I really don't think he'll sell.
I'll make him an offer he can't refuse.
The words were said in an ordinary voice, yet the effect was chilling, perhaps because it was a favorite phrase of the Don's. Michael turned to Johnny Fontaine.
The Don is counting on you to help us get started. It's been explained to us that entertainment will be the big factor in drawing gamblers. We hope you'll sign a contract to appear 5 times a year for maybe a week-long engagement. We hope your friends in movies do the same. You've done them a lot of favors. Now you can call them in.
Sure, I'll do anything for my Godfather. You know that, Mike.
But there was just the faint shadow of doubt in his voice. Michael smiled.
You won't lose money on the deal, and neither will your friends. You get points in the hotel, and if there's somebody else you think important enough, they get some points too. Maybe you don't believe me, so let me say I'm speaking the Don's words.
I believe you, Mike, but there's 10 more hotels and casinos being built on the Strip right now. When you come in, the market may be glutted. You may be too late with all that competition already there.
Tom Hagen spoke up.
The Corleone family has friends who are financing 3 of those hotels.
Johnny understood immediately that he meant the Corleone family owned the 3 hotels with their casinos, and that there would be plenty of points to give out.
I'll start working on it.
Michael turned to Lucy and Jules Siegel.
I owe you. I hear you want to go back to cutting people up, and that hospitals won't let you use their facilities because of that old abortion business. I have to know from you, is that what you want?
Jules smiled.
I guess so. But you don't know the medical setup. Whatever power you have doesn't mean anything to them. I'm afraid you can't help me in that.
Michael nodded absent-mindedly.
Sure, you're right. But some friends of mine, pretty well-known people, are going to build a big hospital for Las Vegas. The town will need it the way it's growing and the way it's projected to grow. Maybe they'll let you into the operating room if it's put to them right. Hell, how many surgeons as good as you can they get to come out to this desert? Or any half as good? We'll be doing the hospital a favor, so stick around. I hear you and Lucy are going to get married.
Jules shrugged.
When I see that I have any future...
Mike, if you don't build that hospital, I'll die an old maid.
They all laughed, all except Jules. He said to Michael,
If I took a job like that, there couldn't be any strings attached.
No strings. I just owe you and I want to even out.
Mike, don't get sore.
Michael smiled at her.
I'm not sore.
He turned to Jules.
That was a dumb thing for you to say. The Corleone family has pulled some strings for you. Do you think I'm so stupid I'd ask you to do things you'd hate to do? But if I did, so what? Who the hell else ever lifted a finger to help you when you were in trouble? When I heard you wanted to get back to being a real surgeon, I took a lot of time to find out if I could help. I can. I'm not asking you for anything, but at least you could consider our relationship friendly, and I assume you would do for me what you'd do for any good friend. That's my string. But you can refuse it.
Tom Hagen lowered his head and smiled. Not even the Don himself could have done it any better. Jules was flushing.
Mike, I didn't mean it that way at all. I'm very grateful to you and your father. Forget I said it.
Michael nodded.
Fine. Until the hospital gets built and opens up, you'll be medical director for the 4 hotels. Get yourself a staff. Your money goes up too, but you can discuss that with Tom at a later time. And Lucy, I want you to do something more important. Maybe coordinate all the shops that will be opening up in the hotel arcades, on the financial side. Or maybe hiring the girls we need to work in the casino, something like that. So if Jules doesn't marry you, you can be a rich old maid.
Freddie had been puffing on his cigar angrily. Michael turned to him.
I'm just the errand boy for the Don, Freddie. What he wants you to do, he'll tell you himself, naturally. But I'm sure it'll be something big enough to make you happy. Everybody tells us what a great job you've been doing out here.
Then why is he sore at me? Just because the casino's been losing money? I don't control that end. Mo Green does. What the hell does the old man want from me?
Don't worry about it.
He turned to Johnny Fontaine.
Where's Nino? I was looking forward to seeing him again.
Johnny shrugged.
Nino is pretty sick. A nurse is taking care of him in his room. But the doc here says he should be committed, that he's trying to kill himself. Nino.
Michael said thoughtfully, really surprised.
Nino was always a real good guy. I never knew him to do anything lousy, say anything to put anybody down. He never gave a damn about anything, except the booze.
Yeah. The money is rolling in, he could get a lot of work singing or in the movies. He gets $50,000 a picture now, and he blows it. He doesn't give a damn about being famous. All the years we've been buddies, I've never known him to do anything creepy. And the son of a bitch is drinking himself to death.
Jules was about to say something when there was a knock on the door of the suite. He was surprised when the man in the armchair, the man nearest the door, did not answer it, but kept reading the newspaper. It was Hagen who went to open it, and was almost brushed aside when Mo Green came striding into the room, followed by his two bodyguards. Mo Green was a handsome hood who had made his rep as a Murder Incorporated executioner in Brooklyn. He had branched out into gambling and gone west to seek his fortune, had been the first person to see the possibilities of Las Vegas, and built one of the first hotel casinos on the Strip. He still had murderous tantrums and was feared by everyone in the hotel, not excluding Freddie, Lucy, and Jules Siegel. They always stayed out of his way whenever possible. His handsome face was grim now. He said to Michael Corleone,
I've been waiting around to talk to you, Mike. I got a lot of things to do tomorrow, so I figured I'd catch you tonight. How about it?
Michael Corleone looked at him with what seemed to be friendly astonishment.
Sure.
He motioned in Hagen's direction.
Get Mr. Green a drink, Tom.
Jules noticed that the man called Albert Neri was studying Mo Green intently, not paying any attention to the bodyguards who were leaning against the door. He knew there was no chance of any violence, not in Vegas itself. That was strictly forbidden, as fatal to the whole project of making Vegas the legal sanctuary of American gamblers. Mo Green said to his bodyguards,
Draw some chips for all these people so they can gamble on a house.
He obviously meant Jules, Lucy, Johnny Fontaine, and Michael's bodyguard, Albert Neri. Michael Corleone nodded agreeably.
That's a good idea.
It was only then that Neri got out of his chair and prepared to follow the others out. After the goodbyes were said, there were Freddie, Tom Hagen, Mo Green, and Michael Corleone left in the room. Green put his drink down on the table.
What's this I hear the Corleone family's gonna buy me out? I'll buy you out. You don't buy me out.
Your casino has been losing money against all the odds. There's something wrong with the way you operate. Maybe we can do better.
Green laughed harshly.
You goddamn Dagos. I do you a favor and take Freddie in when you're having a bad time, and now you push me out. That's what you think. I don't get pushed out by nobody, and I got friends that'll back me up.
Michael was still quietly reasonable.
You took Freddie in because the Corleone family gave you a big chunk of money to finish furnishing your hotel and bankroll your casino, and because the Molinari family on the coast guaranteed his safety and gave you some service for taking him in. The Corleone family and you are evened out. I don't know what you're getting sore about. We'll buy your share at any reasonable price you name. What's wrong with that? What's unfair about that? With your casino losing money, we're doing you a favor.
Green shook his head.
The Corleone family don't have that much muscle anymore. The Godfather's sick. You're getting chased out of New York by the other families, and you think you can find easy pickings here. I'll give you some advice, Mike. Don't try.
Is that why you thought you could slap Freddie around in public?
Tom Hagen, startled, turned his attention to Freddie. Freddie Corleone's face was getting red.
Mike, that wasn't anything. Mo didn't mean anything. He flies off the handle sometimes, but me and him are good friends, right, Mo?
Green was wary.
Yeah, sure. Sometimes I gotta kick asses to make this place run right. I got sore at Freddie because he was banging all the cocktail waitresses and letting them goof off on the job. We had a little argument, and I straightened them out.
Michael's face was impassive when he said to his brother,
You straightened out, Freddie?
Freddie stared sullenly at his younger brother. He didn't answer. Green laughed.
This son of a bitch was taking him to bed 2 at a time, the old sandwich job. Freddie, I gotta admit, you really put it to those broads. Nobody else could make them happy after you got through with them.
Hagen saw that this had caught Michael by surprise. They looked at each other. This was perhaps the real reason the Don was displeased with Freddie. The Don was straight-laced about sex. He would consider such cavorting by his son Freddie, 2 girls at a time, as degeneracy. Allowing himself to be physically humiliated by a man like Moe Greene would decrease respect for the Corleone family. That, too, would be part of the reason for being in his father's bad books. Michael, rising from his chair, said in a tone of dismissal,
I have to get back to New York tomorrow, so think about your price.
You son of a bitch. You think you can just brush me off like that? I killed more men than you before I could jerk off. I'll fly to New York and talk to the Don himself. I'll make him an offer.
Tom, you're the consigliere. You can talk to the Don and advise him.
It was then that Michael turned the full, chilly blast of his personality on the 2 Vegas men.
The Don has sort of semi-retired. I'm running the family business now, and I've removed Tom from the consigliere's spot. He'll be strictly my lawyer here in Vegas. He'll be moving out with his family in a couple of months to get all the legal work started, so anything you have to say it to me.
Nobody answered.
Freddie, you're my older brother. I have respect for you. But don't ever take sides with anybody against the family again. I won't even mention it to the Don.
He turned to Moe Greene.
Don't insult people who are trying to help you. You do better to use your energy to find out why the casino is losing money. The Corleone family has big dough invested here, and we're not getting our money's worth. But I still didn't come here and abuse you. I offer a helping hand. Well, if you prefer to spit on that helping hand, that's your business. I can't say any more.
He had not once raised his voice, but his words had a sobering effect on both Greene and Freddie. Michael stared at both of them, moving away from the table to indicate that he expected them both to leave. Hagen went to the door and opened it. Both men left without saying good night. The next morning, Michael Corleone got the message from Moe Greene. He would not sell his share of the hotel at any price. It was Freddie who delivered the message. Michael shrugged and said to his brother,
I want to see Nino before I go back to New York.
In Nino's suite, they found Johnny Fontaine sitting on the couch eating breakfast. Jules was examining Nino behind the closed drapes of the bedroom. Finally, the drapes were drawn back. Michael was shocked at how Nino looked. The man was visibly disintegrating. The eyes were dazed, the mouth loose, all the muscles of his face slack. Michael sat on his bedside.
Nino, it's good to catch up with you. The Don always asks about you.
Nino grinned. It was the old grin.
Tell him I'm dying. Tell him show business is more dangerous than the olive oil business.
You'll be okay. If there's anything bothering you that the family can help, just tell me.
Nino shook his head.
There's nothing. Nothing.
Michael chatted for a few more moments and then left. Freddie accompanied him and his party to the airport, but at Michael's request didn't hang around for departure time. As they boarded the plane with Tom Hagen and Al Neri, Michael turned to Neri and said,
Did you make him good?
Neri tapped his forehead.
I got Moe Greene mugged and numbered up here.
Chapter 28. On the plane ride back to New York, Michael Corleone relaxed and tried to sleep. It was useless. The most terrible period of his life was approaching, perhaps even a fatal time. It could no longer be put off. Everything was in readiness. All precautions had been taken. 2 years of precautions. There could be no further delay. Last week, when the Don had formally announced his retirement to the Capo Regime and the other members of the Corleone family, Michael knew that this was his father's way of telling him the time was ripe. It was almost 3 years now since he had returned home, and over 2 years since he had married Kay. The 3 years had been spent in learning the family business. He had put in long hours with Tom Hagen, long hours with the Don. He was amazed at how wealthy and powerful the Corleone family truly was. It owned tremendously valuable real estate in Midtown New York, whole office buildings. It owned, through fronts, partnerships in 2 Wall Street brokerage houses, pieces of banks on Long Island, partnerships in some garment center firms. All this in addition to its illegal operations in gambling. The most interesting thing Michael Corleone learned in going back over past transactions of the Corleone family was that the family had received some protection income shortly after the war from a group of music record counterfeiters. The counterfeiters duplicated and sold phonograph records of famous artists, packaging everything so skillfully they were never caught. Naturally, on the records they sold to stores, the artists and original production company received not a penny. Michael Corleone noticed that Johnny Fontaine had lost a lot of money owing to this counterfeiting, because at that time, just before he lost his voice, his records were the most popular in the country. He asked Tom Hagen about it. Why did the Don allow the counterfeiters to cheat his godson? Hagen shrugged. Business was business. Besides, Johnny was in the Don's bad graces, Johnny having divorced his childhood sweetheart to marry Margot Ashton. This had displeased the Don greatly.
How come these guys stopped their operation? The cops got onto them?
Hagen shook his head.
The Don withdrew his protection. That was right after Connie's wedding.
It was a pattern he was to see often, the Don helping those in misfortune whose misfortune he had partly created, not perhaps out of cunning or planning, but because of his variety of interests, or perhaps because of the nature of the universe, the interlinking of good and evil, natural of itself. Michael had married Kay up in New England, a quiet wedding with only her family and a few of her friends present. Then they had moved into one of the houses on the mall in Long Beach. Michael was surprised at how well Kay got along with his parents and the other people living on the mall. And of course, she had gotten pregnant right away, like a good old-style Italian wife was supposed to, and that helped. The second kid on the way in 2 years was just icing. Kay would be waiting for him at the airport. She always came to meet him. She was always so glad when he came back from a trip. And he was too, except now. For the end of this trip meant that he finally had to take the action he had been groomed for over the last 3 years. The Don would be waiting for him. The Capo Regime would be waiting for him. And he, Michael Corleone, would have to give the orders, make the decisions, which would decide his and his family's fate. Every morning, when Kay Adams Corleone got up to take care of the baby's early feeding, she saw Mama Corleone, the Don's wife, being driven away from the mall by one of the bodyguards to return an hour later. Kay soon learned that her mother-in-law went to church every single morning. Often on her return, the old woman stopped by for morning coffee and to see her new grandchild. Mama Corleone always started off by asking Kay why she didn't think of becoming a Catholic, ignoring the fact that Kay's child had already been baptized a Protestant. So Kay felt it was proper to ask the old woman why she went to church every morning, whether that was a necessary part of being a Catholic. As if she thought that this might have stopped Kay from converting, the old woman said,
"Oh, no. Some Catholics only go to church on Easter and Christmas. You go when you feel like going."
Kay laughed.
Then why do you go every single morning?
In a completely natural way, Mama Corleone said,
"I go for my husband.
She pointed down toward the floor.
So he don't go down there. I say prayers for his soul every day, so he go up there."
She pointed heavenward. She said this with an impish smile, as if she were subverting her husband's will in some way, or as if it were a losing cause. It was said jokingly almost, in her grim, Italian, old crone fashion. And as always, when her husband was not present, there was an attitude of disrespect to the great Don.
How is your husband feeling?
Mama Corleone shrugged.
He's not the same man since they shot him. He lets Michael do all of the work. He just plays the fool with his garden, his peppers, his tomatoes, as if he were some peasant still. But men are always like that.
Later in the morning, Connie Corleone would walk across the mall with her 2 children to pay Kay a visit and chat. Kay liked Connie, her vivaciousness, her obvious fondness for her brother Michael. Connie had taught Kay how to cook some Italian dishes, but sometimes brought her own more expert concoctions over for Michael to taste. Now, this morning, as she usually did, she asked Kay what Michael thought of her husband, Carlo. Did Michael really like Carlo, as he seemed to? Carlo had always had a little trouble with the family, but now, over the last years, he had straightened out. He was really doing well in the labor union, but he had to work so hard, such long hours. Carlo really liked Michael, Connie always said. But then, everybody liked Michael, just as everybody liked her father. Michael was the Don all over again. It was the best thing that Michael was going to run the family olive oil business. Kay had observed before that when Connie spoke about her husband in relation to the family, she was always nervously eager for some word of approval for Carlo. Kay would have been stupid if she had not noticed that almost terrified concern Connie had for whether Michael liked Carlo or not. One night, she spoke to Michael about it and mentioned the fact that nobody ever spoke about Sonny Corleone. Nobody even referred to him, at least not in her presence. Kay had once tried to express her condolences to the Don and his wife, and had been listened to with almost rude silence, and then ignored. She had tried to get Connie talking about her older brother without success. Sonny's wife, Sandra, had taken her children and moved to Florida, where her parents now lived. Certain financial arrangements had been made so that she and her children could live comfortably, but Sonny had left no estate. Michael reluctantly explained what had happened the night Sonny was killed, that Carlo had beaten his wife, and Connie had called them all, and Sonny had taken the call and rushed out in a blind rage. So naturally, Connie and Carlo were always nervous that the rest of the family blamed her for indirectly causing Sonny's death, or blamed her husband, Carlo. But this wasn't the case. The proof was that they had given Connie and Carlo a house in the mall itself and promoted Carlo to an important job in the labor union setup. And Carlo had straightened out, stopped drinking, stopped whoring, stopped trying to be a wise guy. The family was pleased with his work and attitude for the last 2 years. Nobody blamed him for what had happened.
Then why don't you invite them over some evening and you can reassure your sister?
Kay said.
The poor thing is always so nervous about what you think of her husband. Tell her, and tell her to put these silly worries out of her head.
I can't do that. We don't talk about those things in our family.
Do you want me to tell her what you've told me?
She was puzzled, because he took such a long time thinking over a suggestion that was obviously the proper thing to do. Finally, he said,
I don't think you should, Kay. I don't think it will do any good. She'll worry anyway. It's something nobody can do anything about.
Kay was amazed. She realized that Michael was always a little colder to his sister Connie than he was to anyone else, despite Connie's affection.
Surely you don't blame Connie for Sonny being killed.
Michael sighed.
Of course not. She's my kid sister, and I'm very fond of her. I feel sorry for her. Carlo straightened out, but he's really the wrong kind of husband. It's just one of those things. Let's forget about it.
It was not in Kay's nature to nag. She let it drop. Also, she had learned that Michael was not a man to push, that he could become coldly disagreeable. She knew she was the only person in the world who could bend his will, but she also knew that to do it too often would be to destroy that power, and living with him the last 2 years had made her love him more. She loved him because he was always fair, an odd thing, but he always was fair to everybody around him, never arbitrary, even in little things. She had observed that he was now a very powerful man. People came to the house to confer with him and ask favors, treating him with deference and respect. But one thing had endeared him to her above everything else. Ever since Michael had come back from Sicily with his broken face, everybody in the family had tried to get him to undergo corrective surgery. Michael's mother was after him constantly. One Sunday dinner, with all the Corleones gathered on the mall, she shouted at Michael,
You look like a gangster in the movies. Get your face fixed for the sake of Jesus Christ and your poor wife, and so your nose will stop running like a drunken Irish.
The Don, at the head of the table, watching everything, said to Kay,
Does it bother you?
Kay shook her head. The Don said to his wife,
He's out of your hands. It's no concern of yours.
The old woman immediately held her peace, not that she feared her husband, but because it would have been disrespectful to dispute him in such a matter before the others. But Connie, the Don's favorite, came in from the kitchen, where she was cooking the Sunday dinner, her face flushed from the stove.
I think he should get his face fixed. He was the most handsome one in the family before he got hurt. Come on, Mike, say you'll do it.
Michael looked at her in an absent-minded fashion. It seemed as if he really and truly had not heard anything said. He didn't answer. Connie came to stand beside her father.
Make him do it.
Her 2 hands rested affectionately on his shoulders, and she rubbed his neck. She was the only one who was ever so familiar with the Don. Her affection for her father was touching. It was trusting, like a little girl's. The Don patted one of her hands.
And we're all starving here. Put the spaghetti on the table and then chatter.
Connie turned to her husband.
Carlo, you tell Mike to get his face fixed. Maybe he'll listen to you.
Her voice implied that Michael and Carlo Rizzi had some friendly relationship over and above anyone else's. Carlo, handsomely sunburned, blonde hair neatly cut and combed, sipped at his glass of homemade wine.
Nobody can tell Mike what to do.
Carlo had become a different man since moving into the mall. He knew his place in the family and kept to it. There was something that Kay didn't understand in all this, something that didn't quite meet the eye. As a woman, she could see that Connie was deliberately charming her father, though it was beautifully done and even sincere. Yet it was not spontaneous. Carlo's reply had been a manly knuckling of his forehead. Michael had absolutely ignored everything. Kay didn't care about her husband's disfigurement, but she worried about his sinus trouble, which sprang from it. Surgery repair of the face would cure the sinus also. For that reason, she wanted Michael to enter the hospital and get the necessary work done. But she understood that in a curious way, he desired his disfigurement. She was sure that the Don understood this too. But after Kay gave birth to her first child, she was surprised by Michael asking her,
"Do you want me to get my face fixed?"
Kay nodded.
You know how kids are. Your son will feel bad about your face when he gets old enough to understand it's not normal. I just don't want our child to see it. I don't mind at all, honestly, Michael.
Okay.
He smiled at her.
I'll do it.
He waited until she was home from the hospital and then made all the necessary arrangements. The operation was successful. The cheek indentation was now just barely noticeable. Everybody in the family was delighted, but Connie more so than anyone. She visited Michael every day in the hospital, dragging Carlo along. When Michael came home, she gave him a big hug and a kiss and looked at him admiringly.
Now you're my handsome brother again.
Only the Don was unimpressed, shrugging his shoulders and remarking,
"Hey, what's the difference?"
But Kay was grateful. She knew that Michael had done it against all his own inclinations, had done it because she had asked him to, and that she was the only person in the world who could make him act against his own nature. On the afternoon of Michael's return from Vegas, Rocco Lampone drove the limousine to the mall to pick up Kay so that she could meet her husband at the airport. She always met her husband when he arrived from out of town, mostly because she felt lonely without him, living as she did in the fortified mall. She saw him come off the plane with Tom Hagen and the new man he had working for him, Albert Neri. Kay didn't care much for Neri. He reminded her of Luca Brasi in his quiet ferociousness. She saw Neri drop behind Michael and off to the side, saw his quick, penetrating glance as his eyes swept over everybody nearby. It was Neri who first spotted Kay and touched Michael's shoulder to make him look in the proper direction. Kay ran into her husband's arms, and he quickly kissed her and let her go. He and Tom Hagen and Kay got into the limousine, and Albert Neri vanished. Kay did not notice that Neri had gotten into another car with two men, and that this car rode behind the limousine until it reached Long Beach. Kay never asked Michael how his business had gone. Even such polite questions were understood to be awkward. Not that he wouldn't give her an equally polite answer, but it would remind them both of the forbidden territory their marriage could never include. Kay didn't mind anymore. But when Michael told her he would have to spend the evening with his father to tell him about the Vegas trip, she couldn't help making a little frown of disappointment. Michael said,
"I'm sorry. Tomorrow night we'll go into New York and see a show and have dinner, okay?"
He patted her stomach. She was almost 7 months pregnant.
"After the kid comes, you'll be tied down again. Hell, you're more Italian than Yankee. 2 kids in 2 years.
And you're more Yankee than Italian. Your first evening home and you spend it on business."
But she smiled at him when she said it.
You won't be home late.
Before midnight. Don't wait up for me if you feel tired.
I'll wait up.
At the meeting that night, in the corner room library of Don Corleone's house, were the Don himself, Michael, Tom Hagen, Carlo Rizzi, and the 2 caporegime, Clemenza and Tessio. The atmosphere of the meeting was by no means so congenial as in former days. Ever since Don Corleone had announced his semi-retirement and Michael's takeover of the family business, there had been some strain. Succession and control of such an enterprise as the family was by no means hereditary. In any other family, powerful caporegime such as Clemenza and Tessio might have succeeded to the position of Don, or at least they might have been allowed to split off and form their own family. Then, too, ever since Don Corleone had made the peace with the 5 families, the strength of the Corleone family had declined. The Barzini family was now indisputably the most powerful one in the New York area, allied as they were to the Tattaglias. They now held the position the Corleone family had once held. Also, they were slyly whittling down the power of the Corleone family, muscling into their gambling areas, testing the Corleones' reactions, and, finding them weak, establishing their own bookmakers. The Barzinis and Tattaglias were delighted with the Don's retirement. Michael, formidable as he might prove to be, could never hope to equal the Don in cunning and influence for at least another decade. The Corleone family was definitely in a decline. It had, of course, suffered serious misfortunes. Freddie had proved to be nothing more than an innkeeper and ladies' man, the idiom for ladies' man untranslatable, but connotating a greedy infant always at its mother's nipple. In short, unmanly. Sonny's death, too, had been a disaster. Sonny had been a man to be feared, not to be taken lightly. Of course, he had made a mistake in sending his younger brother, Michael, to kill the Turk and the police captain. Though necessary in a tactical sense as a long-term strategy, it proved to be a serious error. It had forced the Don eventually to rise from his sickbed. It had deprived Michael of 2 years of valuable experience and training under his father's tutelage. And of course, an Irish as a consigliere had been the only foolishness the Don had ever perpetrated. No Irishman could hope to equal a Sicilian for cunning. So went the opinion of all the families, and they were naturally more respectful to the Barzini-Tartaglia alliance than to the Corleones. Their opinion of Michael was that he was not equal to Sonny in force, though more intelligent, certainly, but not as intelligent as his father, a mediocre successor and a man not to be feared too greatly. Also, though the Don was generally admired for his statesmanship in making the peace, the fact that he had not avenged Sonny's murder lost the family a great deal of respect. It was recognized that such statesmanship sprang out of weakness. All this was known to the men sitting in the room, and perhaps even believed by a few. Carlo Rizzi liked Michael, but did not fear him as he had feared Sonny. Clemenza, too, though he gave Michael credit for a bravura performance with the Turk and the police captain, could not help thinking Michael too soft to be a Don. Clemenza had hoped to be given permission to form his own family, to have his own empire split away from the Corleone. But the Don had indicated that this was not to be, and Clemenza respected the Don too much to disobey, unless, of course, the whole situation became intolerable. Tessio had a better opinion of Michael. He sensed something else in the young man, a force cleverly kept hidden, a man jealously guarding his true strength from public gaze, following the Don's precept that a friend should always underestimate your virtues and an enemy overestimate your faults. The Don himself and Tom Hagen were, of course, under no illusions about Michael. The Don would never have retired if he had not had absolute faith in his son's ability to retrieve the family position. Hagen had been Michael's teacher for the last 2 years and was amazed at how quickly Michael grasped all the intricacies of the family business. Truly, his father's son. Clemenza and Tessio were annoyed with Michael because he had reduced the strength of their regime and had never reconstituted Sonny's regime. The Corleone family, in effect, had now only 2 fighting divisions, with less personnel than formerly. Clemenza and Tessio considered this suicidal, especially with the Barzini-Tartaglia encroachments on their empires. So now they were hopeful these errors might be corrected at this extraordinary meeting convened by the Don. Michael started off by telling them about his trip to Vegas and Mo Green's refusing the offer to buy him out.
But we'll make him an offer he can't refuse. You already know the Corleone family plans to move its operations west. We'll have 4 of the hotel casinos on the Strip, but it can't be right away. We need time to get things straightened out.
He spoke directly to Clemenza.
Pete, you and Tessio, I want you to go along with me for a year without questioning and without reservations. At the end of that year, both of you can split off from the Corleone family and be your own bosses, have your own families. Of course, it goes without saying we'd maintain our friendship. I wouldn't insult you and your respect for my father by thinking otherwise for a minute. But up until that time, I want you just to follow my lead and don't worry. There are negotiations going on that will solve problems that you think are not solvable. So, just be a little patient.
Tessio spoke up.
If Mo Green wanted to talk to your father, why not let him? The Don could always persuade anybody. There was never anyone who could stand up to his reasonableness.
The Don answered this directly.
I've retired. Michael would lose respect if I interfered. And besides, that's a man I'd rather not talk to.
Tessio remembered the stories he'd heard about Mo Green slapping Freddie Corleone around one night in the Vegas hotel. He began to smell a rat. He leaned back. Mo Green was a dead man, he thought. The Corleone family did not wish to persuade him. Carlo Rizzi spoke up.
Is the Corleone family going to stop operating in New York altogether?
Michael nodded.
We're selling the olive oil business. Everything we can, we turn over to Tessio and Clemenza. But, Carlo, I don't want you to worry about your job. You grew up in Nevada. You know the state. You know the people. I'm counting on you being my right-hand man when we make our move out there.
Carlo leaned back, his face flushed with gratification. His time was coming. He would move in the constellations of power. Michael went on.
Tom Hagen is no longer the consigliere. He's going to be our lawyer in Vegas. In about 2 months, he'll move out there permanently with his family, strictly as a lawyer. Nobody goes to him with any other business as of now, this minute. He's a lawyer, and that's all. No reflection on Tom. That's the way I want it. Besides, if I ever need any advice, who's a better counselor than my father?
They all laughed, but they had gotten the message despite the joke. Tom Hagen was out. He no longer held any power. They all took their fleeting glances to check Hagen's reaction, but his face was impassive. Clemenza spoke up in his fat man's wheeze.
And in a year's time, we're on our own. Is that it?
Maybe less. Of course, you can always remain part of the family. That's your choice. But most of our strength will be out west, and maybe you'd do better organized on your own.
Tessio said quietly,
In that case, I think you should give us permission to recruit new men for our regimes. Those Barzini bastards keep chiseling in on my territory. I think maybe it would be wise to teach them a little lesson in manners.
Michael shook his head.
No. No good. Just stay still. All that stuff will be negotiated. Everything will be straightened out before we leave.
Tessio was not to be so easily satisfied. He spoke to the Don directly, taking a chance on incurring Michael's ill will.
Forgive me, Godfather. Let our years of friendship be my excuse. But I think you and your son are all wrong with this Nevada business. How can you hope for success there without your strength here to back you up? The two go hand in hand. And with you gone from here, the Barzini and the Tartaglia will be too strong for us. Me and Pete will have trouble. We'll come under their thumb sooner or later. And Barzini is a man not to my taste. I say the Corleone family has to make its move from strength, not from weakness. We should build up our regimes and take back our lost territories in Staten Island, at least.
The Don shook his head.
I made the peace, remember? I can't go back on my word.
Tessio refused to be silenced.
Everybody knows Barzini gave you provocation since then. And besides, if Michael is the new chief of the Corleone family, what's to stop him from taking any action he sees fit? Your word doesn't strictly bind him.
Michael broke in sharply. He said to Tessio, very much the chief now,
There are things being negotiated which will answer your questions and resolve your doubts. If my word isn't enough for you, ask your Don.
But Tessio understood he had finally gone too far. If he dared to question the Don, he would make Michael his enemy. So he shrugged and said,
I spoke for the good of the family, not for myself. I can take care of myself.
Michael gave him a friendly smile.
Tessio, I never doubt you in any way. I never did. But trust in me. Of course I'm not equal to you and Pete in these things. But after all, I've my father to guide me. I won't do too badly. We'll all come out fine.
The meeting was over. The big news was that Clemenza and Tessio would be permitted to form their own families from their regime. Tessio would have his gambling and docks in Brooklyn, Clemenza the gambling in Manhattan, and the family contacts in the racing tracks of Long Island. The two Cava regime left not quite satisfied, still a little uneasy. Carlo Rizzi lingered, hoping that the time had come when he finally would be treated as one of the family, but he quickly saw that Michael was not of that mind. He left the Don, Tom Hagen, and Michael alone in the corner library room. Albert Neri ushered him out of the house, and Carlo noticed that Neri stood in the doorway, watching him walk across the floodlit mall. In the library, the three men had relaxed as only people can who have lived years together in the same house, in the same family. Michael served some anisette to the Don and scotch to Tom Hagen. He took a drink for himself, which he rarely did. Tom Hagen spoke up first.
Mike, why are you cutting me out of the action?
Michael seemed surprised.
You'll be my number one man in Vegas. We'll be legitimate all the way, and you're the legal man. What can be more important than that?
Hagen smiled a little sadly.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about Rocco Lampone building a secret regime without my knowledge. I'm talking about you dealing direct with Neri rather than through me or a Coppa regime. Unless, of course, you don't know what Lampone's doing.
How did you find out about Lampone's regime?
Hagen shrugged.
Don't worry, there's no leak. Nobody else knows. But in my position, I can see what's happening. You gave Lampone his own living. You gave him a lot of freedom. So he needs people to help him in his little empire. But everybody he recruits has to be reported to me. And I notice everybody he puts on the payroll is a little too good for that particular job, is getting a little more money than that particular exercise is worth. You picked the right man when you picked Lampone, by the way. He's operating perfectly.
Michael grimaced.
Not so damn perfect if you noticed. Anyway, the Don picked Lampone.
Okay, so why am I cut out of the action?
Michael faced him and, without flinching, gave it to him straight.
Tom, you're not a wartime consigliere. Things may get tough with this move we're trying to make, and we may have to fight. And I want to get you out of the line of fire, too, just in case.
Hagen's face reddened. If the Don had told him the same thing, he would have accepted it humbly. But where the hell did Mike come off making such a snap judgment?
Okay, but I happen to agree with Tessio. I think you're going about this all wrong. You're making the move out of weakness, not strength. That's always bad. Barzini is like a wolf, and if he tears you limb from limb, the other families won't come rushing to help the Corleones.
The Don finally spoke.
Tom, it's not just Michael. I advised him on these matters. There are things that may have to be done that I don't want in any way to be responsible for. That is my wish, not Michael's. I never thought you were a bad consigliere. I thought Santino a bad Don, may his soul rest in peace. He had a good heart, but he wasn't the right man to head the family when I had my little misfortune. And who would have thought that Fredo would become a lackey of women, so don't feel badly. Michael has all my confidence, as you do. For reasons which you can't know, you must have no part in what may happen. And by the way, I told Michael that Lampone's secret regime would not escape your eye. So that shows I have faith in you.
Michael laughed.
I honestly didn't think you'd pick that up, Tom.
Hagen knew he was being mollified.
Maybe I can help.
Michael shook his head decisively.
You're out, Tom.
Tom finished his drink, and before he left, he gave Michael a mild reproof.
You're nearly as good as your father. But there's one thing you still have to learn.
What's that?
How to say no.
Michael nodded gravely.
You're right. I'll remember that.
When Hagen had left, Michael said jokingly to his father,
So, you've taught me everything else. Tell me how to say no to people in the way they'll like.
The Don moved to sit behind the big desk.
You cannot say no to the people you love, not often. That's the secret. And then when you do, it has to sound like a yes. Oh, you have to make them say no. You have to take time and trouble. But I'm old-fashioned. You're the new modern generation. Don't listen to me.
Michael laughed.
Right. You agree about Tom being out, though, don't you?
The Don nodded.
He can't be involved in this.
Michael said quietly,
I think it's time for me to tell you that what I'm going to do is not purely out of vengeance for Apollonia and Sonny. It's the right thing to do. Tessio and Tom are right about the Barzinis.
Don Corleone nodded.
Revenge is the dish that tastes best when it is cold. I would not have made that peace but that I knew you would never come home alive otherwise. I'm surprised, though, that Barzini still made a last try at you. Maybe it was arranged before the peace talk and he couldn't stop it. Are you sure they were not after Don Tomasino?
That's the way it was supposed to look. And it would have been perfect. Even you would never have suspected. Except that I came out alive. I saw Fabrizio going through the gate, running away. And of course, I've checked it all out since I've been back.
Have they found that shepherd?
I found him. I found him a year ago. He's got his own little pizza place up in Buffalo. New name, phony passport, and identification. He's doing very well as Fabrizio the shepherd.
The Don nodded.
So, it's to no purpose to wait any longer. When will you start?
I want to wait until after Kay has the baby, just in case something goes wrong. And I want Tom settled in Vegas, so he won't be concerned in the affair. I think a year from now.
You've prepared for everything?
The Don did not look at Michael when he said this.
You have no part. You're not responsible. I take all responsibility. I would refuse to let you even veto. If you tried to do that now, I would leave the family and go my own way. You're not responsible.
The Don was silent for a long time, and then he sighed.
So be it. Maybe that's why I retired. Maybe that's why I've turned everything over to you. I've done my share in life. I haven't got the heart anymore. And there are some duties the best of men can't assume. And that's it then.
During that year, Kay Adams Corleone was delivered of a second child, another boy. She delivered easily, without any trouble whatsoever, and was welcomed back to the mall like a royal princess. Connie Corleone presented the baby with a silk layette handmade in Italy, enormously expensive and beautiful. She told Kay,
Carlo found it. He shopped all over New York to get something extra special after I couldn't find anything I really liked.
Kay smiled her thanks, understood immediately that she was to tell Michael this fine tale. She was on her way to becoming a Sicilian. Also during that year, Nino Valenti died of a cerebral hemorrhage. His death made the front pages of the tabloids because the movie Johnny Fontane had featured him in had opened a few weeks before and was a smash hit, establishing Nino as a major star. The papers mentioned that Johnny Fontane was handling the funeral arrangements, that the funeral would be private, only family and close friends to attend. One sensational story even claimed that in an interview, Johnny Fontane had blamed himself for his friend's death, that he should have forced his friend to place himself under medical care. but the reporter made it sound like the usual self-reproach of the sensitive but innocent bystander to a tragedy. Johnny Fontaine had made his childhood friend, Nino Valenti, a movie star, and what more could a friend do? No member of the Corleone family attended the California funeral except Freddie. Lucy and Jules Siegel attended. The Don himself had wanted to go to California, but had suffered a slight heart attack, which kept him in his bed for a month. He sent a huge floral wreath instead. Albert Neri was also sent west as the official representative of the family. 2 days after Nino's funeral, Moe Greene was shot to death in the Hollywood home of his movie star mistress. Albert Neri did not reappear in New York until almost a month later. He had taken his vacation in the Caribbean and returned to duty tanned, almost black. Michael Corleone welcomed him with a smile and a few words of praise, which included the information that Neri would from then on receive an extra living, the family income from an East Side book considered especially rich. Neri was content, satisfied that he lived in a world that properly rewarded a man who did his duty. Chapter 29. Michael Corleone had taken precautions against every eventuality. His planning was faultless, his security impeccable. He was patient, hoping to use the full year to prepare. But he was not to get his necessary year because fate itself took a stand against him, and in the most surprising fashion. For it was the Godfather, the great Don himself, who failed Michael Corleone. On one sunny Sunday morning, while the women were at church, Don Vito Corleone, dressed in his gardening uniform, baggy gray trousers, a faded blue shirt, battered dirty brown fedora decorated by a stained gray silk hatband. The Don had gained considerable weight in the last few years and worked on his tomato vines, he said, for the sake of his health, but he deceived no one. The truth was, he loved tending his garden. He loved the sight of it early on a morning. It brought back his childhood in Sicily 60 years ago, brought it back without the terror, the sorrow of his own father's death. Now the beans in their rows grew little white flowers on top. Strong green stalks of scallion fenced everything in. At the foot of the garden, a spouted barrel stood guard. It was filled with liquidy cow manure, the finest garden fertilizer. Also in that lower part of the garden were the square wooden frames he had built with his own hands, the sticks cross-tied with thick white string. Over these frames crawled the tomato vines. The Don hastened to water his garden. It must be done before the sun waxed too hot and turned the water into a prism of fire that could burn his lettuce leaves like paper. Sun was more important than water. Water also was important, but the two, imprudently mixed, could cause great misfortune. The Don moved through his garden hunting for ants. If ants were present, it meant that lice were in his vegetables, and the ants were going after the lice, and he would have to spray. He had watered just in time. The sun was becoming hot, and the Don thought, prudence, prudence. But there were just a few more plants to be supported by sticks, and he bent down again. He would go back into the house when he finished this last row. Quite suddenly, it felt as if the sun had come down very close to his head. The air was filled with dancing golden specks. Michael's oldest boy came running through the garden toward where the Don knelt, and the boy was enveloped by a yellow shield of blinding light. But the Don was not to be tricked. He was too old a hand. Death hid behind that flaming yellow shield, ready to pounce out on him, and the Don, with a wave of his hand, warned the boy away from his presence. Just in time. The sledgehammer blow inside his chest made him choke for air. The Don pitched forward into the earth.